Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. So today will kind of be an interesting video because I'll be doing some traditional art for the first time in a long while. I've been doing product design for several years now and digital art really only in the last few months, and I feel like I haven't really dedicated a lot of time to honing my traditional art skills. I haven't painted or done drawing with a pen and paper for a long time. I think the last time I picked up a pencil, pen, or paintbrush to do some traditional art seriously was when I was preparing my portfolio to apply to universities and colleges. I've done paint nights here and there, but I feel like I wasn't really in my element and I didn't have practice beforehand. Now that I'm doing art full-time, I want to be able to revisit those parts of me that I really enjoyed in my childhood and improve on my skills there. I think when you're either drawing on paper or painting on a canvas, it does feel so much different than when you're doing art on your iPad. With traditional art, there really is no undo button like there is on Procreate. So this will also teach me how to have more confidence in what I'm drawing and to let go of imperfections and overthinking the smaller details. And I definitely don't want to lose that side of me that still really enjoys working with my hands. I feel like there are so many mediums other than digital art that I can learn from and adapt techniques from. So this will just be the first small start of getting back into it. So today I wanted to dedicate a piece of artwork to welcoming traditional art back into my life. We'll be making art using some acrylic markers that I recently got that I'm really excited about. I'll be doing an unboxing and swatching them all for you guys. I'll do some practice and then hopefully by the end of the video I'll have a mini print. And we're just gonna have a good time, chat about some topics, give you guys updates on what's happening with nookends, what we hope to do this year, and so on. So without further ado, let's get started. Today we'll be reviewing an acrylic marker set that I received from a company called Arrtx. This video was not sponsored by them, so I'll be giving my unbiased review of my impression and experience with the markers. The markers came in a really sturdy, well-protected box. There are 90 water-based brush-tipped markers, and the backside has a swatch of each of the colors that are inside the box. The first thing that I see when I open the box are these labels that I assume are for the markers themselves. So it seems like these ones are for the bottom of the marker, and it kind of goes in these small insets on the bottom. And these other stickers are for the body of the pen. Kind of an interesting choice to have these stickers, whereas just having them manufactured and printed right onto the pen itself. I'm guessing maybe that was a manufacturing choice and it was more cost efficient to have the stickers be separate. These markers by Arrtx are brush tip markers, and this differs from their round tip markers in that you don't need to shake or pump the tip in order for the paint to flow. Because they're meant to be stored with the tip pointing downwards, it's ready to go right when you start, which makes it convenient and easy to use. All of the colors that are included in the 90 marker set are very bold and vibrant, and this set also includes a lot of different greens and earth tones, which is great because those are some of my favorite colors. My first impression is I'm not a huge fan of how the markers are meant to be stored downwards. I think that could just cause a lot of ink to be pooled at the bottom of the pen. In terms of the pen tip itself, it was the size that I expected it to be. I realized as I was uncapping some of these, the ink would actually leak out from the tip of the pen, and it happened with these metallic ones specifically, with the silver one. While it makes sense that these pens don't require to be pumped for the ink to flow, I think the way they are stored could look a bit cleaner because they are kind of loose in their compartments. So I think for this video, I'm just gonna put the stickers that are meant to be at the bottom of the pen, so I can get to drawing right away. So once I get my tweezers out of my drawer, let's start putting these on. It's actually really satisfying taking the stickers off of the sheet and putting them on the pen. I will say though, after doing 90 of these, I feel like my fingers are gonna freeze up. Okay, so we're finally on the last row, and we're done. It's nice to see all the stickers with their labels on them, and like I said before, I think it would have been nice if these markers already had their color's name on them. It would have saved a lot of time and I could get right into painting with them as opposed to having to put all these stickers on. And I will say there weren't any specifications on the markers already being organized in the layout that is mirrored on the stickers, so I'm glad I didn't shuffle any of the markers around prior to putting on the stickers, because then they wouldn't have corresponded correctly and I would have had to do some guessing to get them in their right place. So key tip, when you do get these markers, do not move them around, do not take them out of the box until after you're done labeling them, just to save yourself some time and rearranging later. Once they're all labeled, I think it's totally fine to move them around. They're very saturated upon doing a bunch of tests. They're very opaque, which I was happy about. Out of all the 90 pens, they were all very juicy, except for one that was a little bit on the dry side, and then the metallic silver one was very juicy to the point where it was dripping right off the pen as I uncapped it, so I'm not sure what happened there. Minus the little mistake with the metallic silver pen at the end, I think the swatches went really well. I would have wished for there to be a little bit more browns or grays, but all in all, I think the colors match well together and I can picture a lot of combinations. They definitely are fast drying, but I'm curious to see how they will work once they are layered on top of each other and how much drying time will be needed for that to ensure they don't smudge. All in all, the swatches went pretty well and I'm very satisfied with how opaque the markers are. It's actually very good also at covering pen or pencil. I love how the variable line width lets me do very thin lines but also very thick lines. The second thing I wanted to do before getting into my drawing was doing some test drawings, just to try out the different ranges of color, how they blend together, and how easy it is to control the pen. So we're going to start off by drawing a flower. I'm going to choose a lavender so I can try some blues, purples, greens, pinks. Today I'm wearing a sweater which is very spring themed. It has a bunch of embroidered flowers all over it, so I thought it would be fitting to do some practice sketches of flowers. I'm going to start by sketching it out in my very thin pencil. This is a pencil I used during university, so I haven't brought this out in a long time. I also brought out my Prismacolor colored pencils because I'll be trying to use those later on to layer on top of the marker pens. So once I had that done, I laid down the colors for the stem and the leaves. Even though I just started, I already feel a little bit intimidated. And then after that, I got to draw in the little flowers on the lavender. It was a fun but a little challenging experience choosing the colors that would pair well together. I think with the more I practice, I'll be able to find better color combinations and the order of colors that layer on better. My first impressions as I'm using the markers for this lavender drawing is that they're pretty easy to use. The colors are going down very nicely. They're very lightweight and they're easy to hold, and compared to using acrylic paint with a paintbrush, it's more easy to control the area that you're trying to fill in or outline. So I think these are very beginner friendly. For these test drawings, I'm hoping to try out some techniques where I'm doing some blending, layering, using them for details such as highlights and shadows, how they pair with using a black pen with details. Because they are so opaque and quick drying, I don't see them being very good at blending, so I'm curious how to get around that. In terms of paints, I've only really tried regular acrylic paint, watercolor paint, and gouache, and since they all have much more moisture content, it's interesting now using these pens because they're more controlled in that sense, in that you never have too much paint going on the paper at once. I think one slight downside is that you don't get the nice texture that you get from different paints with acrylic, where as you layer, you get different textures which add some personality to the artwork. So that's just one key difference that I'm noticing by using these markers. And then on top of them, I decided to use a black fine tip marker just to accentuate some of the contours of the flowers. I think using the black pen adds some nice characteristic to the drawing and definitely adds a certain style to it. Paint and pen always seems like a really nice combo to me. Oh, I actually forgot to draw the leaves back when I was doing the stem, so let's go ahead and fill those in. I'm pretty happy with how this one's shaping up. I definitely think it's kind of a trust the process type of thing, drawing with these acrylic markers. At first it seems like it won't really work out, but I think with the more that you add, with how you layer the paint, how it blends with other colors that are on the page, I think it actually kind of comes around in the end. Being a total beginner with these pens, I don't think I'm doing that bad, and I'm having a lot of fun with them. And after adding the final details, we're done our first drawing. I think it's not bad, but we can definitely do better. For my second one, I'll be doing a couple of blueberries to test out how things look like in more 3D. I'm using my blue very thin pencil just to draw an outline of the blueberries, which will be 2 simple spheres. And then I pre-selected some blues that I have on the side here, but we'll start by filling in both of the spheres fully with one of the blues. I was really impressed with how opaque the blues were looking. I think compared to the lighter colors, there was definitely no streakiness to it. I'm doing this drawing purely from memory, so we'll see how this goes. I'm absolutely loving how the blue is looking on the paper. And then followed by a little lighter shade of blue to add some dimension to the sides. The layering of the blues has been working out pretty well so far. I'm curious how it will change as I keep adding more blues. Using a lighter blue to outline the hole in the center. For some reason, this always feels so awkward to draw. And then bringing in this icy blue to draw in some of the highlights. This is the part where I started to overthink my choices a little bit. This one was a little bit challenging just because I'm not the best at drawing 3D objects, but it was still really fun layering all of the blues together and seeing how they kind of build up into the image of a blueberry. Doing the shadows and highlights is always a bit scary for me, just because I feel like it can either make or break a drawing depending on how you kind of do the contours. But I think with something like acrylic markers, you kind of have to go in with some confidence because it is kind of semi-permanent. Although the great thing about these markers is that if you do lay down the wrong color, you can easily just put down another color to put it right on top, given that it does layer on properly. So it is a little bit forgiving in that sense. And that's my second test drawing. I think they turned out pretty cute in the end. For the third one, I wanted to test out more of the layering of the paint markers, so I tried out some of the greens in the set. I looked at this bush photo as a reference and just tried to replicate it basically the same. So I chose 3 different hues of green and then drew the very back layer in this very light green. Since I'm using these markers on my sketchbook paper, I can understand why it's not bleeding right through, so I'm curious how this will work in something like a journal or a hobonichi, something with thinner paper, because I'm not sure how they'll withstand the amount of pigment on the paper. I'm also curious if these would work for Shrinky Dinks because I've explored trying it with permanent marker and pencil crayon, and I think they work for Posca markers, so I am curious if these will work or if they might crackle and warp. And then I chose this other green for all the midtones in the bush, kind of just adding them here and there. This one was a very trust the process type of drawing because I will say kind of adding the leaves and the silhouette of the bush is kind of random. But as you build it up, as you layer more, it does form a picture eventually. At first, I wasn't that confident with how it was starting off, but this one actually ended up being one of my favorite ones overall. And then the third layer, which is the darkest green, this one was a bit more sparse and just highlighting the different depths of the bush here and there. And then I used a little bit of this teal at the very end just to add a different type of color to the bush. And bringing back the lighter green to add more detail. This one was so much fun to do, mainly because I'm working with green, which is my favorite color. Also because I feel like I achieved some 3D effect. The layering was very effective, and I would turn my page here and there to check if the back had bled through, but it hadn't, so I was very happy about that. And then this final image was some flowers again. I wanted to test out the warmer colors. I wanted to draw 3 different colors of tulips. Spring makes me so happy because that's when everything starts to bloom again and all these pretty flowers start coming out. These markers are great for left-handed users because they're quick drying, which means there's much less chance that they'll smudge as you're drawing, given that you give it enough time to dry. And since I'm a lefty, this is pretty game-changing because I'm always smudging things whenever I draw. The brush tip is nice because it can adjust your line width based on the amount of pressure you apply while you're drawing. I prefer this over the round tip because with that one, you only really have the choice to use one line width. Because the paint in these pens are so opaque, the colors come out very bold and it has really high coverage. And because these are acrylic markers, if I'm drawing something in pencil or just laying down a sketch, I can easily just paint right on top of it and it will cover it right up. Since this is my first time diving into paint markers, I think as a beginner I will probably invest in a smaller set just to start off with and to just get used to painting with markers. That being said, I think the value for this box is pretty good. I'm not sure how long the markers will last, but kind of based on how saturated and juicy these pens are starting off by, I can see them lasting for many uses. I'd be curious to try other pens that they have and see how they compare to these ones. I think I have a lot of fun layering all the greens together because it does make it look very three-dimensional. The set, like I said before, includes a lot of the earthy toned colors, so I think it's perfect for drawing anything in nature. And again, this one layered very easily. I think I still need a lot of more practice on how to control the pen when it comes to changing line width and doing more of the thinner lines. It was a little bit hard to control the line weight when it came to drawing the stems of the flowers. But honestly, I think that just comes with practice and learning how to control the pen more and having confidence in your lines. But I had a lot of fun learning all the different techniques, experimenting with doing some 3D, doing some layering, seeing how the colors blend together, and so far I'm really enjoying my experience with the markers. I think this, compared to actually painting with a paintbrush and acrylic paint, is much different in the sense that you don't need to mix the colors. All of these colors are custom and they're very convenient to just pick up and go. I can imagine myself bringing these markers on like a road trip because they're very portable, as opposed to trying to bring acrylic paints with me. And that is our final test drawing. I'm actually very happy with how this page turned out. I'm a bit nervous going into my final piece because I feel like I won't like it as much as this page. So now we can move on to the main attraction for this video, which is drawing a small little print. And I'll be drawing this out of my watercolor sketchbook that I bought a while ago. It comes in this smaller square-sized watercolor book, and it's great because it has these tear away pages, so you can just draw on it and then tear it out and then put it in a journal or scrapbook, or in my case I will either take photos or scans of it to translate it to digital means. So I'm thinking for this little print it will be a combination of using the techniques that I learned in my practice sketches. I want to do a bunch of layering of different colors, blocking out different shapes, adding some 3D effects to it, whether that's adding highlights or shadows, or just playing around with the composition of the photo for this one. For this print, I'm doing a little journaling in the grass scene. I'll have a couple things in this print that I actually own that I'm using as inspiration. So I'm thinking I'll have like a little picnic blanket, I'll have a journal, some tools. I'm just gonna see where it takes me. So usually before I start any piece, I draw it with pencil just to kind of outline the composition, and then I go in with my eraser to just lightly erase the lines so I can still see them, mainly just in case the pencil does show after the paint has been laid on top of it. So I'm going to start by blocking out the grass in the scene, kind of similar to how I did the silhouette of the bush. I'm just going to be blocking out where the grass will be, kind of avoiding the areas where there will be other objects. I was realizing as I was blocking out the green in the grass that this light green was a little bit streaky, so I had to go over it a few times until it was opaque enough. I was wondering if that was a characteristic of their lighter pen. I took a while contemplating what color I wanted to make the picnic blanket, but I ultimately chose to do a blue one, so I also used this blue to block out the color while avoiding all the little things that I wanted to put on the blanket. This is definitely the most therapeutic part of the painting process, mainly because you're just filling in shapes, and the sound of the markers on the paper actually sounds really nice to me, so I really enjoyed that. At this point of the drawing, I was feeling a little bit regretful of my color choices, mainly because they were outside of my comfort zone, but I had to tell myself to keep believing in the process because it will all work out. I think what's been really fun with these acrylic markers is that it really teaches me to be confident with where I'm placing my colors. However, since these markers are still acrylic markers, I'm glad there is some leeway in that if you do lay down the wrong color, you can most oftentimes just put another color on top of it and it will cover it up. For the picnic blanket, I'm thinking about trying something a little bit challenging by doing a blue gingham pattern. This will really test out how the layers will blend together. Because I'm laying down the blue first and then the cream and white after, I am kind of curious how opaque the white will be on top of the blue. And as expected, the white isn't that opaque on top of the blue, so I'm just going to have to do several layers of the white just to get it to be opaque. I was actually a little bit okay with this because with gingham patterns, the white lines aren't always fully opaque, so the fact that the white wasn't going on fully opaque was totally fine. This made it so I can build it and make some areas more white and other areas more translucent. So in this case, I was actually grateful that this was the effect that they were having. That being said though, I did have to go over the white areas many times in order to get it to the desired transparency that I wanted it to be at. And even then, it wasn't the perfect effect, but it worked for what I was going for. I'm just going in with my white color just to accent the places where the lines intersect. I ended up being so fixated on getting the layering correct for this gingham picnic blanket that I ended up having some white marks on the bottom of my left hand, but this is mainly because I wasn't waiting long enough in between the layers and was getting impatient with myself. But now that we have the rough background planned out, now we can move on to the fun stuff like picking out the color for the journal. I'm using this kind of sage mint color. I've been having so much fun with these markers so far. I think they're great for anyone who is looking to get into painting with acrylic as an alternative to using paints and paintbrushes. So for a small portion of this video, I was thinking about answering some questions that we've been getting, and also just tell you guys a little bit about us, who we are, who our pets are, and what's been going on. We've been doing a lot of brainstorming around the type of products that we want to launch our shop with, and we decided to focus mainly on stickers and prints for the time being. It's been really fun making stickers at home. I think it's definitely a good time to be doing this because of everything that's kind of happening in the world right now. It's a bit of a tricky time, and we're kind of struggling to understand how shipping and manufacturing things will work in the next several months and how to navigate getting our goods made. I think we bought our equipment and materials at a good time because it was right before all the tariffs happened and before prices of things started changing. So deciding to manufacture our stickers at home was a hard decision, but it was something that we could handle despite the tariffs. We just got waitlisted for an art market that's coming up in August right now, so we're crossing our fingers that we're able to get a table because it will be our first experience tabling. We're working really hard despite this to try to get a lot of our products on our shop so we can get them in your guys' hands. So I thought that I would talk a little bit about myself during this video. I realized in a lot of our videos you guys don't really get to know who we are behind the scenes. So I wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about how I decided to start an art business and how I got Sarah in on it. So I was in tech for around 7 to 8 years. I was working as a product designer, and at first I really enjoyed my job. I felt that there was a lot to learn and a lot of great teammates to work with, and my favorite part of being a designer was getting to be creative. I got to think of my own solutions, work cross-functionally with engineers, data scientists, UX researchers, product managers, other designers. But I think as time went on, and I think especially around the time of the pandemic, it was particularly a tough time for me, and I felt myself getting burnt out as there were a lot of layoffs happening, job security was no longer a thing, and it didn't feel like it was a very productive or healthy environment for me during this time. I also think when you're working at a big company, it's easy to feel like you're just a small cog in a big machine, and I definitely felt that in where I wasn't feeling creatively fulfilled anymore. So I took a year off after leaving tech just to contemplate what my next steps would be. I was always interested in art and journaling and stationery. I would often go to small art markets and check out what other artists are doing. It always excited me and made me so curious about how to produce your own products. And I've never really been in a place where I had the full creative reins over a project. And I thought that this would be a good way to challenge myself to be more of a leader, to find direction for myself, and to create things that I can see myself using. And that's kind of where the beginning ideas of starting the shop would be, was to create a brand that brought me joy and comfort, but also utilities that could help me express my creativity even more. And of course to as well offer these to other people who shared the same sentiment as me. So after I had this idea, I confided with Sarah, and it turns out she was also very excited about the same things I was. So we decided to partner up and see where that would bring us. And since then, Sarah and I have been working hard to develop our brand and to kind of just show you guys what we love to do, showing you guys hauls of the things that we buy just because we love sharing and creating a community around stationery. We decided to have our main subjects in our art be our pets. So I have two half Siamese, half tabby siblings named Mira and Mello. I adopted them from Puerto Rico about 2 years ago from a rescue, and they've just been the most affectionate cats. I used to have a cat named Ronnie who was very, very dear to me, and she lived to be 14 years old. And after she passed, I knew that I wanted a cat in my life again, so I soon got to searching for cats again, and I found these two siblings in a litter from Puerto Rico. They were about 6 weeks old and they were very tiny. I knew instantly that when I saw them, I was meant to take care of them. Fast forward to today, they're much bigger now and they're healthy and they're just the biggest cuddlers ever. And for Sarah, she has Emmy, who is a 6 to 7 year old Korean village dog. She was also rescued from South Korea. Emmy is the sweetest little girl and she is so obedient and very well mannered. Back when Sarah was living in Toronto, the cats would play with Emmy and it was just the cutest thing ever. So anyway, we really just love incorporating our pets into our artwork, and we hope to expand it to be beyond just our pets because we know not everyone can resonate or relate with our pets like we can. We want to explore expanding the universe to see what else we can draw because we're both really excited to explore new things. For the month of April, we've been doing an art challenge where we are drawing one sticker a day, and that's been a really, really fun experiment to see how fast we can think of ideas, how fast we can execute them, and get them done all in one day. It's been really fun seeing all the engagement that we've been getting from you all and across our different social media platforms, and we're really excited to wrap it up in just one more week. So we want to say thank you for your support so far, and we're definitely going to be missing this challenge, but that doesn't mean we won't bring it back another time. And now back to the drawing. I'm just adding some final details with my black pen, also adding another layer to my flowers just to make them stand out a little more. Last second, I decided to just add a little ladybug resting on the picnic blanket. And now we're finally done. I really liked how the grass turned out. I think using the different colors and hues of green really helped make it stand out, as well as adding the little flowers in the grass. I think if there's anything I would change, I would probably do the washi tape just a little bit differently because I think the perspective is a little off. And also the little moth on the tin was a little bit hard to draw. I think layering on top of the paint with pencil crayon was a little bit challenging just because there is some texture in the paint once you lay it down and it dries. So it was a little bit cumbersome to draw. I think also because I was trying to speed through this, I didn't give the layers enough time to dry. So my hands did end up being a little bit marked up, but that's okay. I will say when I first started this drawing, I was a bit hesitant to keep going, but I'm kind of glad that I did because even though it didn't end up perfectly, I think I really did learn so many new techniques, how to work with the markers, how they kind of behave when you layer them. Some clear pros about these pens: they're very lightweight, they're opaque, the brush tip is very versatile, the layering and the blending is very impressive, and the color range is good at covering a lot of different colors and shades. In my experience with using the markers today, I had an easier time layering the colors when I started off with the lighter color and then layering it subsequently with the midtones and then finally the shadows. I find that if I wanted to layer the lighter color at the very end, it wasn't as opaque as I would have liked it to be. As for cons, I will say some of the pens were definitely leaky, specifically the metallic ones. That one kind of got on my fingers as I was uncapping it. I like how the packaging makes it clear that the pens are meant to be stored vertically, but because there is some wiggle room in each of the little compartments, it becomes just a little bit hard to see where to put the marker back, since the other ones will kind of overlap that gap. And lastly, these markers are definitely very quick drying, but when you are layering multiple colors on top of each other, unless you are giving it enough time to dry, it will smudge, especially if you're left-handed like me. Overall though, I had a great time using these markers today. It's such a fun medium to work with, and I can't wait to paint with them again. And that will be the end of today's video. I want to thank you guys for watching the video, especially if you stayed until the end. It was really fun having you guys hang out with me as I paint and draw with these markers for the first time. Thank you again to Arrtx for sending these to me. They were a joy to use. I'm looking forward to drawing a lot with these more. I can imagine doing a bunch of different things like stickers, postcards, prints, things like that. So I'm very excited to use these and have these tools available to me now. Thank you so much again for watching. I'm gonna go clean my hands now. We'll see you guys in our next video. Bye!